So hi, welcome to Stretching Your Instructional Muscle with Hyflex for this year's 2022 Language and Literacy. Next. Go ahead, Christine.
Hi, I'm Christine Drieling, and I'm trying to figure out how to move the slides forward. I work at the Hub Center, and we've been doing Hyflex for about a year now, trying to figure all this out. We're excited to share this with you. I'm not sure how to, it's just not progressing. There we go.
Okay, great. And I'm Leah Conklin Olson. And I also work at the Hub Center, like Christine mentioned, and I have been doing it for fewer months than Christine, for a few months, using her knowledge and then experimentation to learn how to do this, or at least to experiment with it. So welcome, we're happy to be here.
There you are.
All right. The objectives for today, we're going to look at what is Hyflex. The animation isn't working. Oh, well. What is Hyflex? We'll define what that means. We'll talk about why we would consider using it, some of the benefits. How does Hyflex compare to some other modes of instruction, such as in-person and virtual only? What equipment is required? So we'll look at some examples of equipment that we've tried out at the Hub Center, and we'll discuss some possible challenges and successes. So using Hyflex has both.
Okay, we're going to start off right now with a Zoom poll. Marisa? Yeah, there you go. You have 3 questions there. Do you know what the term Hyflex means? Have you ever taught a virtual and in-person class at the same time? And how do you feel about teaching a virtual and in-person class at the same time?
Okay, I'm just looking at some of the results as they're coming in, and it looks like quite a few people are familiar with the term Hyflex.
Okay, it looks like most people have participated. I'll just go ahead and end that poll and share the results.
It's interesting. So half people have tried it, teaching both at the same time. But most people are excited. We're leaning towards the excited side, which is maybe why you're here. It's really an interesting way of teaching.
Okay, so what is Hyflex? We'll go over some terminology, and the terms change. So just like regular language, we have new definitions of things evolve. I mean, like the example of breakthrough, we all know that has a new meaning. So Hyflex evolves, what that means, as does some of the other terms that we use for flexible forms of instructional delivery. Go ahead, Christine. So let's look. So yeah, blended, hybrid, Hyflex, oh my, right? So just to get an idea, we've talked about in-person, which you're in a physical space that's the same as the instructor, and it takes place in that physical setting, face-to-face. And then we have virtual / remote / online. You can see them used interchangeably, and it's learning that takes place outside of physical instructional setting. Go ahead. And then we can have variations of the virtual, where we are having synchronous, which is at the same time. The teacher and the learners are in a location at the same time, whether that is virtually or in person. And asynchronous, it occurs at a time, usually at the preference of the teacher or the students. So then we have our blended learning, which is a combination of synchronous, in-person, and virtual learning, but it happens at different times. So a blended synchronous class would be that maybe Monday and Wednesday you meet online, and then Tuesday and Thursday you meet in person. Or maybe Monday through Wednesday you're all online, but you come for a workshop on Thursday to do some in-person practice and training. Hybrid is the combination between synchronous and asynchronous. So whether you're learning online or whether you are in person, there is an asynchronous component where you're doing some self-study on your own time that at the time that is working for you. And then finally, there's Hyflex. And this is a combination of both synchronous in-person and synchronous virtual at the same time. So it's like simultaneous synchronous instruction. And I have all this cool animation that I guess doesn't translate into Pear Deck. So it's supposed to go zoom and zoom and zoom. So we get our in-person, we get our virtual, and they come together in this little package called Hyflex.
All right, so we have the question, why would you choose Hyflex? There we go. So I'm going to just give you an experience like my students have every day when I try to connect the in-person with the online students. If you have another way to get to another window, maybe on a different device or on a different window on your whatever device you're working on for this, please go to the site joinpd.com, and the class code is in the top right of the screen there. So joinpd.com, go to the class code that's in the top right of the screen. So it's VGFHSA. If you can't do that, or if it's not working for you, you can certainly respond in the chat as well. So I'll give you just a minute to get in there. And right now I can see 8 people are in here. Take 10, so I'm just gonna wait a couple more minutes in case a couple more people wanna try to join. So joinpd.com and then put in the class code that's in the top right.
You'll also find those in the chat.
All right. So we have 15 people in there, I think. Maybe it's okay if we move forward. So you can still join at any time. It does not need to be while we're on this slide. So the question, oh, I have to be here. Interesting. The question is, why would we choose Hyflex? What do you think the benefits would be? And we have some ideas on the screen there, but maybe you can think of some yourself. What are the benefits of having a Hyflex classroom with both in-person and online at the same time, and with both synchronous and asynchronous work? Okay, and I believe while you're still answering, I can show you this screen. This is what the teacher would see on Pear Deck. And it allows us to see all the answers at the same time that the students would put in here. So accessibility for students, better attendance. Our students have limited time, transportation time, etc. So sometimes they need to learn from home, right? Yeah, it gives them more control, right? From Amy. Flexibility to allow students to choose the attendance that meets their needs, right? We all have schedule changes. Yeah, let's keep going here. It helps in the COVID area for students who don't feel safe, right? Or in any era where they don't feel safe coming into class for whatever the reason could be. Increase contact hours, help those students who want to be in class but can't get to class because of daycare or transportation. Those are really common issues. Weather, right? We had freezing cold days the last couple of days. I had a lot of online students that showed up. There's choices, flexibility, it meets their needs, less barriers. Yeah. Great, thank you for, it's the best of both worlds, right? Thank you for your participation in that. Let me go back to this. All right. Maybe, there it is. All right, you should be back in the main one. So as you can see here on the slide, it says it's flexible for learners. It can, the in-person students can attend virtually when needed. It can meet learner needs. Learners attending virtually can get in-person support when needed. So a lot of times they would prefer to be at home, but they can't get their link to work for your class, for your online class. So they'll come in to get the help, or for some other asynchronous work, they can come in and get extra support. Or if it's just English support that they need, learning support, they can come in for that and ask specific personal questions, whatever it is. There's flexible programming, so programs can reach more learners. Yeah, as you can see there. All right. I'm going to actually just add to this a little bit. Hyflex was designed initially, maybe 15 years ago, to for in-person learners that had to be away for different reasons. For example, if there's a maternity leave, they just had a baby, or if there's somebody that they need to take care of in the family that lives far away, and then they could come in online. And it just gave them that second option for attending class and not missing out. As we all know, in-person class, just you can possess a lot more of the information just differently. You can gain it a lot quicker if you're in person. That's been proven through research. But the Hyflex option then, or the online option, in addition to the in-person, allows you just temporarily to go online for whatever that reason is. Your car is broken down, or childcare issues, or your kids are quarantining or sick or something like that. And that can be very frustrating for parents to not be able to learn when their kids are at home or for other reasons. And so this allows them that opportunity. So it's been very, very well used and very well appreciated that they can go in either place. So, oh yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's an example in the chat from Susan, who says that in her NAP or NAP class, it would meet the learner's needs. For example, if they need to be away on a Saturday for a child's birthday party, for example, it would cut down travel time and allow both family event and the class to happen, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really nice that they can join on their phones too. It's not ideal, but it works when they need to. It keeps them up to date in everything in class that has been going on. It also is important if they're in groups, specified groups for the whole term or for a session or whatever, then they still feel like they can be part of their group, even if they're online and the other people are in person. They can still be learning together, working together. Okay, so moving on to how does it compare to the experiences that we have had already? Mostly it is similar, there we go, to virtual or online learning. It has the same rigor, it's just as difficult, it's just as challenging. Let me do this, there we go. It uses online materials, slides, interactives, and digital resources, apps, virtual meeting platforms, videos, things like that, that we're using online. If you're an online teacher, it's very similar to that. It promotes student-to-student engagement. So they are working together, you can put them in breakout rooms, etc. Teacher and students can be visible to one another. So how it differs from the online teaching is you cannot simply focus on one delivery mode of teaching, which it takes some practice getting used to watching for people in classroom and the people online, and making sure that you're helping everybody to participate and not leaving anybody out. It must include in-person activities to maximize in-person opportunity. It doesn't mean it has to be different, but it needs to be something that can include all students, both in person and online. Must make a way to connect students from both modes. What that means is don't just keep all in-person people together and all online people together, but have them work together. And so the people in the classroom would also have a device. It could be something they just use for part of the class or all of the class. It could just be their phone, and then they can connect with people that are online as well. So in breakout rooms or on a website or in some way, like in Google Docs or something where they can connect together. There's much more in-person equipment troubleshooting. This is the kicker here. Troubleshooting, it becomes your full-time job when you're doing Hyflex. You're constantly thinking, wait, why can't I hear you? Why can't they hear me? Why can't I see you? It's just constantly questioning and trying to figure out, solve these little problems every day. So there's monitor, camera, aim and focus, troubleshooting issues with AV, managing online and in-person troubleshooting with multiple kinds of student devices. That's another good point. Some have Apple, some have Android, some have tablets, some have computers, some have phones, and you have to know how to work with all of those in person and online and try to help all of them. And that can be overwhelming when you're not ready for it. That's just something to prepare yourself for or to get better at as you get experience. Hyflex versus in person. So this is where it's a little different, but we're going to show some similarities here. It's the same level of instructional rigor. You can use online materials if the in-person students have a digital device. So I have never had a problem since I've been doing Hyflex with a student not having a phone, and that has worked just fine. I used to set them up with computers, and sometimes that works nicely for different activities where you would want them to have a full screen for reading or something. But the phone has worked just fine. It promotes student-to-student engagement, so not just in the classroom, but of course then also online. And then teacher and students can be visible to one another, which shows all those social cues that we want to, that help students to learn the language.
Hey, Christine, I'm going to just pop in from a comment in the chat or question. I think it's good to answer this one right up front. So
Yeah.
Is it daily with tech issues? This is from Megan, or does it ease up once students have been doing it for a bit?
That's a good question. Well, in our school, we have new enrollment dates so often. So the new students will have those same issues that you've already dealt with 100 times. But once they get it, then they start teaching each other, which is nice. And then you can kind of back off and it just produces more language practice for them. The frustration is not the students so much getting into the program, because you can expect that, or getting into the different things. It's more frustrating when it just all of a sudden you can't hear anybody, or all of a sudden they can't see you, and what's the issue? So we'll talk more about that, the tech issues, as we go through this, but that is, I think you get to be more experienced as time goes on, and you feel like, okay, I've got my 25 things I can check, and if it doesn't work, that's the best I can do. I think that's the best I can do with that answer. That is the most frustrating part. The difference is with in-person is that you cannot simply focus again on one delivery mode of teaching. I've seen it where teachers focus so much on the in-person people because they give you energy, that it's really exciting and feels really comfortable teaching in person, and they totally forget about the people that are raising their hands online. So you have to be available for both of those. You cannot have handouts without having them accessible online. So you can hand out paper handouts in class if you'd like, but there needs to be a central place, that's the next point, where those handouts can be accessed. So for example, we read a play, read through part of a play every Wednesday. And so the students in the classroom have their paper copy of the play, and the people at home have their, in my Google Classroom, they can just click on it and download it. And they have it downloaded from the week before, and they can read through it with us. So we're all reading together. Everybody takes their part in the play, and it works every week. Having that central digital location where students can find all materials, it's wonderful for the in-person students because they can access it later and they can practice your materials. And then for the online students, they're using them during class, but then they can also practice as well. Yeah, and again, there's more increased technical thinking, especially if you're just an in-person teacher and switching to this. There's going to be a huge learning curve. So you just have to be ready for it and be okay with things just not working every day. And that's okay. Students can be really flexible, and sometimes they're really gracious. Most of the time they're really gracious. And if they're not, then they're going to choose either an online class or an in-person class if that's important to them. Monitor chat in digital hands, monitor the camera, aim and focus, troubleshoot issues with AV, manage online and in-person troubleshooting with multiple kinds of student devices. Yes, the same thing there.
Great. I'm gonna, before we head to the continuum, I'm gonna look at a couple things in the chat. Heather Yee has a comment. For some of our classes, we have workbooks or copy sets that students can stop by the building to pick up their own paper copy. Then both in-person and online have an option to do paper or digital work.
Yeah.
And Liz Reed says that's a great idea to have the books or paper packets that students can pick up or that can be sent to them.
Right.
Kurt Slater says we use Chromebooks in our program. One thing I've been struggling with is screen share and having gallery view where all participants are viewed at the same time. We are a deaf program, so everyone needs to be viewed.
Sure.
Do you know of a workaround for this? Give me 1 second to read one more question, and then we'll see if we can get back to Kurt's. Jean King says, what type of technology is the teacher using in the classroom? Well, Jean, we'll get to yours in a minute. Christine, do you have an idea for Kurt right off the bat, or is that something we should get back to him in an email?
Just really quick, I don't really know, but I thought there was an add-on that went to like the Google Meet. I thought there was an add-on where you can add the gallery view. Does anybody know? I just remember people talking about that, but I haven't had that issue. So mine does gallery view automatically. I think we'll have to get back to him in an email. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, Heather's got a great suggestion about having a second screen in the classroom. Susan says there may be an app enterprise or an add-on enterprise. And Astrid says you could also contact our Minnesota ABE distance learning support team with your question. And that link to that email there is in the chat, Kurt. Awesome, great question.
Yeah.
All right. As we've been working with Hyflex, each teacher has come into the setting in a different way, whether they favor teaching in person and feel like that brings about their best teaching, or whether they've become so adept at online teaching that they're like, wow, that's actually now my preference. We're starting with an inclination at one side of this continuum or the other, usually. The way I liken it, and it's old research about the classroom, how teachers favor the left side or the right side of the classroom, where you're in the classroom and you're calling on everybody on the left side because that seems to be your preference, and you're doing it unintentionally. Or you're calling on everybody on the right side and you forget to check in with people on the left. So for me, Hyflex is very much this way. You're going to lean towards what your experiences or your intuition or not intuition, but like what you subconsciously connect with. So the goal here is to meet in the middle. And the reason I say that is the goal, and that is something we've been finding in research, but it's also about best practices. There are sets of best practices that are any kind of instruction. They are universal. However, there are some that are specific to in-person that can't be duplicated online, and there are some online that can't necessarily be duplicated in person. And we don't want to leave out our wonderful best practices of in-person learning for opting completely for virtual. So the continuum, as you see, this was also animated, just so you know. I like animation, but it doesn't translate. That's all right. So starting on the left with virtual, online, remote, when you start in that corner, you know you gotta do a couple things to involve your in-person people, right? But you get them all on devices and you're mostly delivering it as a virtual format. And then you're like, okay, I'm gonna stretch myself a little bit. I'm gonna make some really intentional adaptations for in-person learners. I'm gonna make a few. Get started with a few adaptations for in-person learners. And then I move into, okay, I really want to maximize what in-person instruction can do for in-person learners, and at the same time provide the best practices for online. And that's the sweet spot in the middle, that balance. On the opposite side, I start with in-person, same deal. I'm mostly delivering it in person. People online, they see me interact. I remember once in a while to check the chat or the hands. And then I move more towards the middle where I am making some extra adaptations for online learnings. And then I'm moving into the middle to try to balance the two approaches to give the best learning experience for either mode. Okay, now if you would like to participate in the Pear Deck activity, go back to your Pear Deck, wherever you have it on your device, or join it again, same code up in the right corner of your screen. If you prefer just to put something in the chat, that is absolutely fine. And go ahead and move it to the next screen, Christine. Again, the code is up on the right-hand corner if you need that. And if you're going to do this in the chat, you could label 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, starting from the left. So if you just want to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the chat, that's fine. Otherwise, you will move the dot. If you're in the Pear Deck, think about this question. If you were to start Hyflex next week, where would you be on the continuum? Where do you think you could start on this continuum? I think I did a goofy, it's goofy though. This one's reverse. So sorry, folks. I'm putting in-person on the left. Just see if you're paying attention. In-person is on the left, virtual's on the right. Sorry, I transposed those. Move that dot into the area where you think you could start Hyflex next week. And Christine, go ahead and see if you can do that teacher view so we can see where people are moving the dots. Oh, they're big dots, huh? Does the person at the bottom just like, I'm just not
That's
really-
Ramona.
Yeah,
Their names. Oh, Ramona moved.
yeah, the whole drag and drop. So this is great, Pear Deck for students. The drag and drop, it's like going to become like as automatic as, you know, learning how to eat. It's one of the skills you use for all of these. Oh, look at someone put their dot right on the just symbol for balance. That's awesome. Wonderful. Okay, so just keeping this, I feel like as we develop professionally in this work, that we are trying to keep in mind that there are modes of instruction, or I should say there are best practices that we don't want to throw out because we're doing Hyflex. So really, not that you're going to start off that way. And that's the other reason there's this continuum. You really can start off that it's mostly in person, right? And you really can start off that it's mostly virtual. But you always want to have that need for improvement to try to find that spot, which is providing the best quality education according to the mode of instruction. Oh, so a couple things in the chat. Actually, Liz, this is a great activity. She says, this drag and drop activity could be adapted to Hyflex by having the in-person students standing near the spot on the continuum, making the continuum in line in the classroom. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Liz. So people would be doing Pear Deck online, putting their dot, but in person, you could literally have a continuum, and that's bringing in those best practices in the in-person setting.
Yeah, what I like about that, Liz, is that you're thinking that you're helping students to see value in coming to class. It's not just an online class where you're sitting in the classroom, but there's actually physical value to being in the classroom. And it's a little bit different than being online. I like that, Liz. Good idea.
Okay. Great, keep thinking like that. That's the kind of challenges. And I just want to say one more thing about it. It will be overwhelming if you aim for the sweet spot right away. So don't overwhelm yourself with the kind of prep that you're going to do to get there right away. Let this be an evolution, and give yourself some time to figure those things out.
Yeah. All right, let's move ahead here. All right. Leah, I think that's you, right? Am I presenting the right thing? I hope so.
I guess so, yes. Again, I wanted the animation. No, okay, that's good. Rigor. So these are just some of the things that we're looking at. So creating the best of both worlds. Somebody used that quote, which I thought, well, it's in one of my slides. So keeping the rigor. We want to keep those rigor. We want to keep our state standards in focus. And we can do that in either mode, and we can do it in this Hyflex mode. Community, don't lose sight of the community. Build that community like we talked about, both connecting students from the two sectors and also building them within each mode. Flexibility, obviously that creates great flexibility, prepare students for both modes of instruction so they can make that quick pivot when needed. And then the digital skills. Somebody mentioned that earlier, how in our pod comments, Pear Deck comments, excuse me, about digital skills. So now both sets of learners are learning digital skills, which is so important in so many different ways. Thank you. All right, Christine.
All right, so let me get my camera back on here. So somebody brought up equipment, and that's been kind of the biggest transition for us at the Hub Center, where I'm going to talk here. I'm going to show.
Yeah, and Christine, I am just a little bit over time, so we'll.
Yes, yeah. So I said we have tried 3 things at the Hub Center that have all been successful to some extent. And it's all been unsuccessful to some extent. We had the camera and tripod that we did first. We had just one camera in the room, and that's the cheapest option, and it works great. It's fine, but there are definitely some limitations to it. Then we started adding a second camera. So we had one camera on the students and one camera on the teacher, and that was great. Also, that was the next transition, but again, it was there's limitations to that. Then we have the owl, which has wonderful sound. It's excellent because it shows people 360 in the whole room, and the people at home can be completely involved with the people in the classroom and see them. However, you need to have strong internet, and ours must be lacking at the Hub Center. It doesn't seem to be working well for us. Maybe in some other place it could work. The swivel is what we're kind of leaning towards now, which includes an iPad and a robot that spins to follow the teacher wherever he or she may be teaching from. This is wonderful if you are a whiteboard writer because it will follow you to the right whiteboard. You can see clearly what has been written, and the students can be completely involved. If you have to point to something that you have on your wall or on a different board, you just walk over there and the robot follows you with the iPad. All right.
Great, just one quick chat. They're using OWLS in Minneapolis AE, adult ed, and sometimes students struggle on the receiving end.
Interesting. Yeah, we haven't tested it enough. I'm going to try it one more time on Monday. I love the idea of it, so it's frustrating that it's not working for us perfectly, but maybe it will work on our different location. Thank you for sharing that. That might be it. It might have been my internet was having a problem, or the other people's are having a problem. And then does it zoom in and out? It does not. Neither of them do, but the swivel, nope, it just follows you. Just follows you.
Thanks, Heather Yee, for the tip.
Yeah, thank you. Because we're just learning this as we go. That's as far as we've gotten on equipment. So I'm going to move forward if that's all right. Thank you, you guys, for your chat. I'm going to look at that in just a minute here. Other equipment to keep in mind. Let me get out of here. There we go. You need to make sure you have some kind of display screens. I have two of them. One is a TV in my room. It could be a projector of some sort. And then I also have a little portable TV that's like 50 inches or something. And I can move that to different classrooms if I need to. So I have the students all on one, so they can kind of feel like they're part of the classroom. And then I have my projection of my lesson on the other one. Yeah, so I'll just leave it at that. That's the simplest way of explaining that. The whiteboard, then you need to have some sort of way to communicate. So maybe you have a virtual whiteboard, but make sure the students in the classroom can see it. I use a regular whiteboard and the students can read everything I write perfectly fine. All my in-person students write on whiteboards around the room. We have a 360 learning that way. And the students at home can usually see what's written on the boards unless they write really small. Digital Materials Hub, that's the, meeting platform, I'm sorry, meeting platform. That's going to be obviously your Google Meet or your Zoom or whatever program you choose to use. A Digital Materials Hub, I use the Google Classroom. Some people have a website and it helps to keep everything together. It keeps you organized as a teacher and students feel like they can go back to things to review when needed. The class communication system, that just means some way to quickly communicate with your students. I never used to bring my phone to class and now I do because students will write to me on Remind, which is a wonderful teaching app to communicate with students. And they'll text me on Remind and say, hey, I can't get into the meeting, and then I can resend something if needed. So that some way to communicate quickly. Email is a little bit slow. Remind and just texting is another option, of course. And then you need to make sure your Wi-Fi works. So some people have added, I don't even know what it's called, some kind of booster that makes it stronger. And I can see why that is needed. Just for my teaching, I am on 3 different Google Meets, but I'm trying to simplify that. That's one of my goals. All right.
All right, so great, Christine. We're going to go through the next slides pretty quickly. So just what do you think of Hyflex from what we've been talking about? Go to the next one, Christine. So there's 2 options here for Hyflex, as far as I'm concerned. Do you think it is a recipe for disaster or a match made in heaven? Now, there's obviously challenges and successes. We don't have enough time to go through all of the successes and challenges. Yeah, keep going through.
Okay.
Yeah, keep next one. So some of the challenges, I'm just going to go through them quickly. Christine was talking about how she has a very active teaching style. And I mean, I guess I do too. So it's hard to adapt the one that you really prefer to use. And you'll find that you do have to make some adaptations. So you might miss that. All of these we kind of already posed earlier in the presentation. So let's move over to the difficulties. Or successes. That was the difficulties. Sorry. There are successes. Okay.
There are.
Improving your portfolio as a teacher. What can you do? It's amazing. I feel so liberated, empowered. Being really explicit about your instructions and giving clear directions. You can't just, you got to be clearer now because of the two different groups. Bridging the people from one class to the other, becoming tech savvy, building learners' digital literacy skills, providing greater access for learning for all. Yay. All right, next one. So you ready, Christine?
I'm ready.
Okay, go. Who can do Hyflex?
Anyone.
But it takes a village.
That went really well. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
good. All right. So the big thing is you want to have support. So administration needs to be in full support of your ideas for Hyflex, or as a team, or however you do it in your school, that everybody's there to support you, because if you're going alone, it can be very challenging mentally. Having money for equipment, whatever you agree upon as the right equipment for your program, and just that support is so important. In addition, you need to have tech support of some kind. It doesn't need to be a tech person, but it needs to be somebody who is good at thinking through technology, for ordering supplies, for setting up your classroom, and for anytime you're struggling in class, there needs to be somebody that you can be like, please, I can't think through this right now. Please help me. I think that is vital. And that's one thing we're working on at Hub Center, is to get that. Having some kind of training would be nice for each program, as well as learning teaching strategies, how to do it best for both modes at the same time.
Great. So thank you. And we are at time. So if you had additional questions, our emails are right there on the screen. We would love to hear from you, and we can respond to the email. Marisa, if there's anything additional in the chat that we didn't get to, you can send the chat notes to Christina and I, and we'd be happy to follow up on those. Thanks, everybody. Have a great session. Marisa?